It's Spoilerin time. It is time to talk about shows we watch, thanks to all the hard work we do on our other show, Cordkillers, to figure out how to watch them. This week, we'll be talking about The Larry Sanders Show, Hank's Night in the Sun, and Office Romance episodes. Also, Picard, Part 1 of the season finale, Episode 9 of Season 1. Westworld, Season 3, Episode 2. Locke Key, Episodes 7 through 10. And Better Call Saul, Season 5. Episode 5. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Heck yeah, man. We got a whole smorgasbord of tasty hot takes. Where are we going to begin?
Let's begin with the summer mood. That's not happening. Let's begin with Better Call Saul. How are you feeling about Better Call Saul,
Tom,
as we wind along here?
I'm feeling like I have a confession to make. As you know, Better Call Saul comes out on
it airs on
the
Monday.
very night that we record, so we're usually a week behind or whatever. For whatever reason, the episode last week that I was supposed to, because remember I had 2 weeks, or I had a week I was out, so I had 2 weeks to catch up on. For whatever reason, it looked like I was all the way caught up. Last week, I made the cardinal mistake of giving a review to an episode that I had not seen. Episode 304, Namaste. I gave an entire 4 minutes review of an episode I had not seen. Now, here's the horrifying part. I didn't realize that until last night. When I did, I was so ashamed. I watched the episode and I went back. I was like, what the hell did I say about this episode? And I went back to Cordkillers Spoilerin time and I listened to the 4 minute review I gave of the episode that I did not watch. Guess what, Tom? So little has happened that I pretty much nailed it on my review, and every single thing I said pretty much landed. It was amazing.
The one thing you said that tipped me off that maybe that there was something going on was I talked about Mike getting the crap beat out of him, and you said, oh, but he gave it back. And I'm like, well, no, he gave it back last week. This week, he got the crap beat out of him, and he was put in, and he was taken away.
Yeah. Oh, you're right.
And of course, this episode that we're going to talk about for this week, Dedicado a Max, is all about him recovering from getting the crap beat out of him. So if I had pushed you on that, perhaps we would have discovered.
You would have found it, but I don't think it would have been in service of the show. And also, I'm kind of glad it worked out this way because it shows just how glacial the pacing as far as major plot points is.
Let's get. Speaking of glacial pacing, this episode, I honestly know that I know in intellectually that things happened with Jimmy and with Kim, but all I remember is what happened on the ranch, because to me that was the important stuff. Was Mike kind of having this game of chicken long distance with Gus, and this explaining how it was that Mike finally broke bad. Like what made him finally end up having to work for Gus Fring. And I loved that part of it. All the stuff about Jimmy and Howard's offer to join and all of the stuff about Kim and the eviction. And
you didn't like all the different vignettes that they tried to give to push and pull between Jimmy and Kim. I thought
it was a funny joke.
Classical comedy.
And I saw it come and it was executed well. I don't know. I didn't remember it. It didn't stick out in my mind.
Now, forgive me because I watched the two back-to-back just yesterday, and it's the most recent episode where he goes full Saul Goodman with the radiological indications, the cultural burials, and all of that stuff. Yeah. I loved all of that. That is the untapped territory of Saul Goodman that I don't think I can get enough of. And keep in mind, this last episode was the most important because Jimmy offers Kim an off-ramp and say, well, you did our best, but she's the one pushing to go harder into dangerous territory. And we've seen before, one of them can handle that, one of them cannot. So it makes me kind of fear a darker end to the Kim part of the story. The fact that she's pushing. So like, I think that if past indications are any kind of guide, I fear that we end up with a situation where Saul gets off scot-free and Kim ends up taking all of the disbarment and the garbage for that gray area shenanigans that they do. And that's where their story ends. And which would only set up a more interesting reunion in the future black and white timeline.
Yeah. And if there's anybody who will know exactly who that guy up in Omaha working at the mall is, it's Kim Wexler.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was the whole thing where they hire the private detective to spy on Kevin.
I thought that was good. I kind of liked how they in general you want to show but not tell, but I'm glad they told but didn't waste our time with like showing how he got in, like just saying here's an effective way to get inside someone's house. I'm like, yeah, that's all I needed. I believe that you did it. I believe we got there, and I believe that you're crazy enough to want to actually kidnap the guy and rough him up in order to get what you want. You know, I thought that was fine.
Do you have any idea what Kim found? Because they said there's nothing on Kevin. And then she's looking through the pictures and she finds something and smiles. And then she goes out in the lobby and makes a big deal about don't take me off Mesa Verde.
Well, I did like that because she forced their hands. I think she knew that she had the upper hand and that she wanted to, I don't know, press her advantage in that case, sort of lock in, like, hello, world, this is what I'm being pressured on. And I'm so confident that they've got nothing on me, that I'm going to press this issue in front of all of you. I suspect next episode we'll find out a bit of the details on what she thinks she has.
I think they hinted it at the very beginning of that scene where she's on the computer and she keeps looking
Pictures.
at the logo.
Yeah.
I think that she's going to leak to Saul like, oh, hey, Mesa Verde's logo is like some huge copyright or trademark infringement. Suddenly you have all these buildings, all these signs.
Or maybe it is a clue to a previous partnership where there's leverage that, you know, like a bad partnership that broke apart or something.
Something deep. Something with that horse. Something with the horse. Like you get the sense that Kevin, he's a real cowboy type. And if you go for his horse...
Yeah, I didn't see that at the time, but now that you mentioned it, that was a fairly transparent. It's a bit like I'm starting to play Half-Life Alyx, and I'm in a room and I needed to get to the next room, and I spend like 15 minutes trying to figure out what. And then, of course, once I realize how to get through, it was always painted red, and I'm too dumb to get it through my head that it's like, look for whatever's painted red. Like, so I think it's that kind of thing.
That scene starts with the close-up. I just watched this over lunch. I rewatched it. It starts with the close-up of the CRT, and you see all the subpixels and all.
Yep, you're right.
Yep. Okay, that clears it up. Yeah, it's good stuff. Looking forward to the next one. Anything else on BCS?
Nope, digging it.
Let's finish out Locke and Key. I finished a while ago. You guys just finished, and you deserve a medal.
So Brian,
we deserve Whispering Iron to be fashioned into the key of our choice.
So Brian, you've had I think the most expectations of the three of us because you have such adoration for the original graphic novel. How did you feel about this last third?
I'm very, very, very thankful that this show was just good enough to get my 16-year-old into the idea of the story because she read the entire six trade graphic novel in one night and was so profoundly affected by it that we've only talked about it in bits and pieces because the art is so powerful and the story is so great and all those things. So I will forever be thankful that this exists. Also, new sentence. At some point, I stopped requesting that the rest of the family show up to watch episodes with me, and I took it as my burden to get through the rest of it. A bit more CW than I would like.
Yeah.
Not quite enough for me to love. Now, keep in mind, there's various iterations of the story. Audible has a full radio drama of this, and in no way would I consider that a substitute for the original graphic novel, but I enjoyed it as a revisit to a story that is well beloved. And I would put this in the same category. In no way would I make this an ambassador for the story, but for somebody who already saw it, it's a refreshing remix, and I can understand why Tom would enjoy watching all of them in one day. I could also understand why Bryce could watch all of this and say, I'm sorry, you guys said this was a good story. It's just a bit more CW than I would like.
That's I think a lot of the trouble that I had trying to break into it is hearing like, oh, they're going to make Locke and Key. Oh, they made this pilot. Oh, they're working on all this stuff. I think it gave me very prestige TV expectations for something that is 2 or 3 clicks above a CW stuff, your Riverdales and your Arrows.
And it is above. I think as far as production goes, it's above, but I don't know how much of that is the gravitas, the crafting of the story coming through.
And I think, especially looking at like episode 10, where it's a lot of like, here are all of the new loose threads that we're setting up for season 2. And it made me go, oh, this is also probably for teenagers and preteens, because this is certainly not storytelling for adults. It's certainly not leaving anything up to the imagination. And so I think that's also a little bit of the expectation. But I am glad that I'm glad that we binged these last 4, because I think it was a better experience binging these. And also starting with episode 7, which is the whole hostage scene with the kid who killed the father,
Sam Lessiter.
Yeah, I thought that was a great episode to start with, because it wasn't the kids making the same stupid mistake over and over again. It was moving everything along, and I think once it hit that point, we were really going downhill from there in speed, not in terms of quality. It was fun. Tom,
yeah, that's kind of why I just kept watching it, because I could tell, like, okay, but I want to see that next thing, and each one gets a little less annoying than the previous one, and it just carried me along. It was an involuntary response where I knew I was going to watch it and not feel pain, and so I just kept going through it. Like you say, from beginning to end, it definitely had the CW aspect. But once I adjusted to that, I agree with you, Brian. It was at the top end of that kind of production.
Yeah, I do wonder if they reined back in some of the writing specifically to preserve that. I think it's a TV-14 rating that it has. I would be curious to know whether or not the comic book, not that the rating systems are exactly translatable, but the comic book I remember as very mature and very adult. Now, granted, the main characters are teenagers, but the graphicness with which they convey stuff and the horrific way, even without showing what's beyond the Omega Door, just hearing one of the demons talk about the way, mothers eat their young and those that survive eat each other, and what just how dark and awful what is on the other side of that door is, makes it to where you believe that the slightest nick from one of those silver bullets would infect you, would corrupt your soul and make you a dark blackened version of whatever you used to be.
Which I think the show didn't explain well enough before the event happened, and then almost felt like it was retconning it in the same episode later, when it's like, oh, actually, she got grazed by it, and it's like, well, why didn't you show me that in the moment? Like,
well, or better yet, foreshadow it, or I mean,
leave it to next time, leave it to next season, leave any of the things that they set up. They could have brought up.
And again, I'm not going to pretend like they weren't handed an impossible challenge from the beginning, because imagine trying to tell a complete story that may or may not ever get a second season. So you have to hold back some amount in order to please the people who are writing the checks, and then you also have to do justice by the people who know the story and who don't know the story and all that stuff. So I don't know how to solve what they had to deal with, and clearly many came before them and failed to ever get something to air. So as I'm fond of reminding people, it's a miracle anything ever gets to air, and it's wonderful for everyone involved that this made it that far. But having said all that, I'm mainly glad that it exists as a way that got my daughter to read the trades.
All right. Any more thoughts on Locke Key?
What would you give it? What kind of grade would you give it ultimately? I mean, I know you just kind of generally enjoyed it on a Sunday afternoon, but
like a B-.
Tom or Brian, where would you put it at?
Yeah, I'd give it a B-. I think you're talking to somebody who watched David Lynch's Dune, and as a result fell into the video game and the book and all that other stuff. And I will always be thankful that that existed. But almost everyone agrees that Dune was not a good movie. So I'm glad it exists, if only as a portal to draw people into eventually experiencing the graphic novel.
A rousing recommendation.
So a B-. Yeah.
A B-. I think I put it on the same level as the other watchable shows I am just keeping on in the background this past couple of weeks. This is on the same level. This is like a C level for me.
Would you be interested in the experiment of just giving a try to the graphic novel? Because I can give you the complete trades, and we'll see if it lands with you. Maybe we could do an epilogue if it lands different.
That would not be the. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, let's try that.
Okay, I don't want to commit you, but I mean, Penny gobbled him up in like 4 hours.
Okay, yeah. We'll figure something out. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Westworld episode 2. We did go back to the theme parks, as you were worried about, Brian. But it does seem like we went back there just to turn around and go back to the world. This was Bernard on a quest to find Maeve. And so we get a little bit of the backstory of what happened to Maeve's ball from her head. And we get Bernard's hunt for her kind of as a quest. What'd you think of it?
Oh, that tricksy rattlesnake looking all petable over there. I know you's a rattlesnake. I know that's not real fur. I know it's not that fluffy, but yeah, come on over here, rattlesnake. Why don't you cuddle up just a little bit? Let me give you a pettins. They're continuing to do, continuing to make me nervous, but it's another good episode in a row. I like the fact that they didn't waste our time before revealing that War World was an artificial construct. Because also, what the hell kind of psychopath would want to go to War World?
Well, I'm not entirely sure there isn't a War World, but we obviously didn't see it. We only saw the imagination. Like, why would there even be a simulation of it if they didn't have at least plans for it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's been a couple of years, but man, I could have sworn that either Sylvester or Tweety, one of those dudes, was definitely dead. Wasn't one of them definitely dead?
But that was also virtual.
Well, I know, but in real life they're dead. But in the virtual world they were alive, and it was a surprise. Like, was I supposed to think that they were both alive or both dead?
I don't think they both died.
Because first season they faked us out.
The fact that they didn't recognize her was the more important thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I'm increasingly digging Bernard as a character. He's becoming more and more fascinating. The fact that he debugs himself and becomes detached and programs himself and all that stuff. I did notice something. Fun fact, everybody on most television things you see uses a cane wrong. You use a cane on the opposite leg from the injured leg to support it. So if your injured leg is your right leg, you put the cane on your left side so that you are spreading out into a tripod and distributing the weight evenly, and then your left leg goes forward, and then your right leg and the left hand go forward or whatever. There have been 2 times now. Previously, there was only 1 time that I was watching the first episode of Sherlock, in which, spoiler alert, John Watson is walking around with a cane, and I'm like, for such a high quality production, it's really astonishing that he's using the cane totally wrong. You would think they would know that. And then over the course of the episode, it was revealed that it was a psychosomatic illness and that he never needed the cane because he's later, in a moment of urgency, runs and leaps and doesn't seem to need the cane. And it's like, that's very clever. I have to assume that they are deliberately using the cane the wrong way to kind of hint that he has a psychosomatic illness. I noticed the same thing with the level designer guy in this episode before.
Because he's virtual.
Because the whole world is virtual or whatever. I noticed him using the cane wrong, and I was really annoyed by it. And then in the back of my head, I thought, man, I'll give real big points if this is somehow a very subtle hint that this dude is not legit. And sure enough, he was not legit. Nothing was legit.
Wow.
I a little bit. Oh, you're a tricksy rattlesnake, Westworld. I was going to pet you. I'm sure you won't bite me this time. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Did you also did you guys catch the cameos of David Benioff and DB Weiss?
I don't know what they look like. Was it?
I assume, if I can guess, that's them with the dragon.
They were the 2 techs talking about their jobs in Costa Rica.
Ooh.
In the Costa Rica scene. So it wasn't the dragon scene. It was
no. It was the dragon scene. They were talking about selling it to a startup in Costa Rica.
Oh, I thought. Oh, okay.
In pieces.
I did not put those. Okay.
So they were in the real world, and I guess they're fans of the show, and they were doing medieval world, so they threw them in there. I'm not going to boo that. Like, it doesn't get in the way of the story at all if you don't know who they are, and if you do, it's kind of a cute little thing.
Well, to be honest, Tom, I actually thought, oh man, that's a fine scene, unless it's an intentional wink to Game of Thrones, in which case I hate it. And now, just now, I found out that it was an intentional wink to Game of Thrones.
What?
Therefore, I hate it.
Bryce, you take this one.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Fine.
Unless they're doing what I suspect they might be doing, then I've chosen to be angry.
The Dragon Men better not be the guys from the Dragon Men show.
I was already slightly annoyed that the dragon design was so on model for Game of Thrones. I was like,
well, it was according to the behind the scenes that they play after. It was in fact the model from.
That's what I feared, and I actually thought like, well, that was distracting. I would have preferred it if they made it slightly more off model, so I didn't instantly think of Game of Thrones.
Get it, Game of Thrones.
That's okay. All right.
Listen, if you're going to medieval world and you're paying all that money, you want the actual dragon from Game of Thrones there, don't you? Of course you do.
Not in season 3 or season 4. I want it day 1. I want to see the dragon.
So I guess they're setting up like we're not sure who's good or bad. Like, is Maeve the wild card Darth Maul of the story, or that's being wrangled by the forces of order in order to be, is she a lion being loosed against Dolores, the Dragonborn, or what? I mean,
yeah, she's a plaything of the Spanish guy.
I'm with you, Brian. Like, is she on the side of right and good? Is that what we're to believe of the guy in charge of the AI? Also, was that a real place she was at, or was that another simulation? I was still wondering about that.
I think that they knew that they had trod far enough into chaos territory that it would be in their best interests to give us some indication of concreteness right now, and I feel like that's what they were trying to do with her freezing.
Here's an alternative. They picked up the ball. They took the ball and put it in the interface that talks to the big AI in Los Angeles, and the big AI created another place to chat with her, and that was actually the AI, not the designer of the AI.
It could be.
We haven't even heard about that guy before.
It had a very architect-y feel to it. I will say the entire sequence with I'm not a fan of over video gaming everything, but for a video game sequence, that maintenance droid escape scene was pretty good. I'm not in love with all the video game stuff. If I wanted to watch somebody play a video game, I'd go to Twitch.
Well, and to bring it back to the after thing, or the little behind the episode thing, Tom, because remember when they're in the not in the forge, but they're in the control center, and you see the aspect ratio in.
Oh yeah.
And they very upfront say in the behind the scenes that we use this technique before to illustrate when something is virtual, and so it's back in full widescreen when she's talking to the man in white, and so
yeah, you're right. So that must be real.
It would be very proprietary for that to also be virtual, but it's Westworld, so who knows?
Yeah, it would violate their own vocabulary if that were virtual. That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on Westworld?
No. Any predictions on what we see next week?
Dolores. We go back to Dolores and Caleb,
I think we're going to see Maeve getting her stuff together and Dolores recovering, and the pieces starting to go into place for the next battle.
Do we see any more iterations of Man in Black or William blah, blah, blah?
Have you seen the trailer for the season?
Oh, no. So, I never watched it. We will. Never mind. Okay. So, well, that settles that.
All right, let's go to Picard, the first part of the finale. So part 1 of Et in Arcadia Ego. The crew discover the Valley of the Synthetics with a person who looks just like Soji, but has weird eyes, and they all have Data's eyes. And Picard tries to rally the synthetics to his side.
Tom, of
yes?
all the ways I wanted to have it disclosed that beloved Jean-Luc Picard has a fatal brain condition that is terminal, casually mentioned at the beginning of episode 9.
But it wasn't, am I wrong that this was in like one of the first couple episodes?
Was it hinted at or explicitly stated?
Because they mention it in his house. They don't tell us what it is. We get the more details.
Well, we know he's got a thing, right? But we don't know just how bad it is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
we know it's fatal.
Okay. I, having been denied the gravitas of that early on by explicitly refusing to give us the full details, I would have enjoyed 9 episodes later. Maybe now is a good time to let us feel any feelings rather than say, hey, I get this thing anyway, don't talk about it. Literally nobody talk about it.
I've been operating under an entirely different assumption, which is like, oh, this is his last hurrah. We know he's going to die. We don't know when. He's made that clear. Like, this is all gravitas. And if you had then thrown more gravitas on top of it in this episode, I would have been like, too much. Stop chewing the scenery. Like, this felt appropriate to me because I'm like, yes, we all know. And Picard doesn't want to talk about it. So this is the right amount of reminding us that it's serious.
Fair enough. But all of this goes back to making me more convinced that either this season or the series certainly ends with Picard dying and becoming the conscious voice of the USS Picard. I swear to God.
I was really thinking about that when they were talking about those scenes. I'm like, oh, maybe he does.
Well, also, is there any Star Trek anything that the title of the show is not the name of the ship? I guess the movies are not, but all of the series is the title of a ship.
Well, The Next Generation.
Oh, the USS Next Generation.
Also, Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Besides those two.
But since then, you're right. Since that,
the other half.
What you're saying is there's a chance that I'm right.
The trend of the 90s onward has been. Yeah.
I'm not in love of the universe being made of rubber and just week to week being told, now the good guys are this guy, and now the bad guy is this guy, and now this person's redeemable, now they're not. And I'm having a very tough time right now, Tom. I suspect that you're still having a good time.
I'm still having a good time. I've been having a great time. Valley of the Synthetics was a little bit much. However, I do like the idea that there is a highly advanced synthetic race out there, because that's one of the things Star Trek always does well is, yes, but there's a way bigger threat that you don't know about, and it's unknown, and we're going to explore the unknown. I'm not loving this sort of like cult compound that in the tradition of Data that's going on, but the idea that we might get an actual advanced synthetic race that is the new Borg, that is more complex, and everyone has misunderstood that the admonition is neither victory for the synthetics over the humans nor destruction to the humans, that everybody got it wrong, and yet it's probably still dangerous. I'm very fascinated with that and where we're going to go with it.
Speaking of which, 2 predictions that I think there's no way can't be true. One I'm going to steal because I can't resist, even though they're ghoulishly hating on it. The folks over at Red Letter Media made the prediction that there's no way this series ends without Picard linking up to the Borg cube the way we saw 7 of 9 do.
So that's obvious foreshadowing, right?
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yep. But the other thing that is of my own, very clearly that golem that they're creating, this is the only way they redeem what's her name that killed that dude, is if he essentially is totally made whole and he's like, well, I'm a synth now, but my brain has been downloaded, and I can forgive you for killing me because that was all part of my plan. Therefore, you can remain a main cast character, and it's not weird at all that a straight up stone cold murderer is one of the core cast of Picard.
I kind of love that she's a murderer because she was manipulated into it. She feels horrible about it. And it's a way deeper character than if she just made a mistake. Like this is a perfectly innocent person who has been manipulated by people far more strategic and clever into doing something that she can't live with. I expect her to self-destruct. I expect her to sacrifice herself or kill herself or do something worse.
No, she's too cute and too blonde to not be in the core cast.
Allison Pill doesn't last in shows. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That's something I've noticed. But I have also thought, like, are we sure that was Maddox? Are we sure that wasn't the synth? I keep waiting for the real Maddox to finally pop up and be like, that wasn't me the whole time.
Yes. I think they'll do the inverse of that, where it's like, well, the real me
and that
left,
may be too.
my consciousness many years ago.
Or maybe none of them were him. It's all synths all the way down.
Did you love another Noonien Soon? Was that fun?
Yeah, that was all right. I actually just like seeing him get to have like acting range.
Well, I was excited at first, and then he became cartoony. Like, I love your golden eyes that I definitely fabricated in a machine.
Yeah, they didn't do it enough with him. I'll give you that.
Like, for a brief moment, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be wild if, I started to do the math on how much younger Brent Spiner was and how much freer his schedule would be and how interesting it would be if he could, be a present role going into seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5 and stuff. And then they made him a cartoon. So I didn't really.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Picard?
I like, I like parts of it quite a bit. I think that, I think Rios is great. And I think Rafi's great. I think that, the majority of the cast whose names doesn't rhyme with Ricard is quite good.
All right. Let's get into Larry Sanders' show. We have a couple of good episodes. First of all, is Larry is sick, and Hank's Night in the Sun, which is the name of the episode, happens, where Hank is the only one left to host the show. Artie just can't bring himself to cancel it for many, many reasons. And of course, that turns Hank into a monster. And then the other one is Office Romance, where Larry starts striking up a romance with Darlene, played by Larry's actual wife, he's about to divorce while this series was being aired.
Well, and Darlene is Hank's assistant in the show, right?
In the show, correct? Yeah. Yes.
Okay, going in reverse order. That second one makes, I don't know if it makes it more interesting or less interesting to know that it's his real life wife, because I thought it was a weird episode when I watched it. I wasn't sure that any of that was necessarily terribly compelling or interesting at the time. However, I did love, it's a cartoonish episode because you got to move fast because you only have 22 minutes, but Hank becoming, going from zero to monster instantly. I thought the pacing was spot on, and it's like, do the one thing, do the other thing, see the results of it. I like that quite a bit.
I'm glad they didn't have Hank tank, right? Like, they play it up like he's going to freeze and he's not going to do well, but he is a professional. He's done
just
this
bad.
sort of thing all his life. He's just not good at it. And so his nervousness in the first episode throws him on the mercy of the cue cards, which saves him and makes him worthwhile. And then they tell, there's the bit where Norm is like, hey, this guy's great, isn't he? And what it comes off as humbleness, even though we know it's not, because he's just unsure how to deal with it. And so I love that, because I'm like, yes, all this is believable. All this is true. It's not too cartoonish. I felt like his turning into a monster started to get a little more cartoonish after that.
It got very cartoonish very quick, but again, I forgive it a little bit for its very short format, because I don't know how you get, because the delicious part is when he crosses so far over the line that he loses the audience. This is an audience that's primed to want to support him and want to love him, but he's just so bad so fast that people just start shouting boo. Like, who goes to a taping of one of these shows and has the courage to shout boo at the beloved co-host of 20 plus years or whatever?
Well, and as we've seen, and anybody who's been to one of these knows, they coach you specifically to applaud.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Larry feeds on your energy, laugh at everything, clap loud. So after that kind of indoctrination, it would take a lot for somebody to get actually booed.
Well, and then meanwhile, they did, to their credit, write awful enough lines where it's like, I was feeling like, yeah, somebody should boo him. And they're like, oh, good, they are. It's great.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's cartoonish, but maybe it's called for. Maybe it's the editorial cartoon aspect of this show that you need.
Did you dig the Office romance episode, or
it was all right? I found it a little scattered. I kept being distracted by the fact that like, oh, that's actually Gary Shandling's wife. Well, did they just want to flirt with each other on the show? I guess like that kept going through my mind. It was, if outside of that, a good 90s era version of Office romance. Obviously it would be told quite differently today, I think. But yeah, it was all about like, none of this sort of thing ever works well, and here's why. And they, again, kind of cartoonishly, editorial cartoon, took that to the extremes.
Yeah. I don't think I have much more to go on.
I thought it was fun to very slowly see, oh, everybody on the show is banging each other, and everybody else knows it except the audience, or I guess probably Larry. I guess the idea is that Larry never knew all of this until he accidentally dug 1 inch under the ground and found all of the dirty water.
Yeah.
Aaron Brockovich.
Which, I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, folks. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. Patreon.com/DTNS if you want to get these a little early. Sorry, Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Because if you go to that other thing I just said, you get a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not related to the show at all. Patreon.com/Cordkillers if you want to get these episodes a little early. And thank you, especially in these times, for anybody who can support us. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.